All right. I want to welcome everybody to another episode of the podcast. We have a special international guest today from the other side of the world. I think it's pretty much the other side of the world, right? Einar. And if you are listening on your favorite podcast directory, be sure to leave us a 5-star review if you like what you hear. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that like button and please subscribe to the feed so we can keep bringing you valuable conversations like the one we are having today. So I want to welcome Einar Bodström. Einar, I think probably through a publicist or a booker or something like that, we got connected. I remember we spoke while you were walking through the airport in, where was it, Copenhagen or Denmark, or you were on your way to some conference, right? A climate conference?
Yeah, it was in the Copenhagen airport.
All right, well, I appreciate you putting an hour aside when your feet are on the ground for us to talk. But maybe you want to get a little bit into, where you grew up and how you got interested or concerned is a better word about what's going on in the world and climate, and then a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey, because I was saying this off the mic, you kind of took an interesting route, because a lot of people think of climate change and save the world, whatever, that it's more of a nonprofit route than it is a for-profit, entrepreneurial route. And you took the for-profit route, and you've been involved with several companies, all seem to circle somehow around climate. But maybe we can go backwards and then you can take us forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, happy to.
Okay.
Happy to. And thanks for having me, Mitch. It's great to be here.
Okay, awesome. And it's what, 3 o'clock in the afternoon there? 4 o'clock? It's 10 a.m.
4 o'clock, it's TGIF. So, about to crack my first beer. I'm not going to do it while speaking.
Yeah, I just got back from my breakfast meeting. So, yeah. All right, let's tell your story. Go ahead.
Wow. So, childhood advice, it's, I don't think that there's super much to, happy nuclear family, loved school, loved sports. Yeah. So there's very little darkness.
Okay. Doesn't have to be. I just
no, I know. But I think I've always been concerned, like even since I was a child, about if this happens, then that happens.
Right.
So I can backtrack that to me being 4-year-old.
Right.
I remember quite vividly from a lesson in high school. I think it was geography, where the topic of basically resources, water scarcity.
Yeah.
And then coming into CO2. Rising temperatures, those effects on water scarcity, not next year, but down the line.
Right.
And I remember sitting there and suddenly being scared shit.
Because I saw school, right? Now you're like making the connection. Yeah, that's probably when I figured it.
And that was kind of firmly planted in my soul then. And I've been more or less concerned ever after, growingly so.
Yeah.
And
But what did you do? So after high school, you went to university in Europe?
Not at first, actually. So it's been kind of slightly random journey. Right after high school, I thought I didn't know what I was going to do. So I signed up as a substitute teacher to wherever. And that's when the teacher shortage in Sweden was at its peak. So they basically, anyone could teach.
Here you go,
anyone.
Right? We'll sign your hand and you can walk in.
Yeah, I was actually yelled at in the principal's office because students were not allowed there. And I'm like, no, you actually called me. I'm a substitute. And
they thought you were one of the students?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. But you were just out of high school, right? You were just out of high school. What, 17,
I was for first week. I was named the 19-year-old by the students.
That's funny.
But I got the keys to a classroom and then was teaching natural sciences to 14-year-olds. I was 19. Okay. So one could call that being a charlatan. But I did okay, and I was I loved it. I firmly loved it. And then I stayed there for 3 years. They didn't get rid of me for 3 years, and I took 2 classes through graduation, and cried immensely on the last day. But after those 3 years, you know, my 3 charlatan years, but also the coming my coming of age, I would say. I wanted to be somewhere where I felt there was more, I would say, immediate action. I love the students. I sometimes felt that I was, you know, that the pace of kind of me wanting to do things in a different way, in a new manner, didn't really reside with the rest. With some teachers, absolutely, but not with all. Maybe not always the principal. And I'm not saying that's completely a bad thing. I was like, if there would only be teachers like me on that school, you know, there would be very little order, to be honest.
Yeah, right, of course. And
but
natural sciences is basically what environmental science is.
Yeah, like it's in the Swedish curriculum, it's a blend of what is it, biology, chemistry, and maths.
I see. Okay.
So
So you abandoned the kids after 3 years left.
I abandoned the kids. They're in good places now. And then I went to business school, so the Stockholm School of Economics, because I heard that that's where the action is.
Yeah.
And which it was. I entered that space, and there was just people with the pace was high. But I found the actual studies not super inspiring.
Okay.
I thought, you know, you made all these assumptions of like how basically how the market economy is, you know, fantastic in all its shapes and forms, and that's what gonna, you know, create joy in the world and our lives. And you know, on basically this I didn't really get it, because like just the fact that natural resources was always assumed to be, you know, for free. And I was also, to be quite honest, you know, I wasn't a grade A student, but along that journey, me and a couple of buddies there, we started making films.
Oh, okay, that's where the film started. Okay.
Yeah, so trying to like be funny.
Yeah, it wasn't about climate change. The films weren't about
no. God, no. We did wine testing.
Just goofing around, having a good
goofing
time.
Around. I think the wine testing episode is basically giving 2 people each 4 bottles of wine and doing speech and balance tests along the route and see which wine has the best effect. That's the test.
That's so funny.
So I wouldn't do that, you know. Obviously,
but you weren't a film major. This was just a hobby.
It was a hobby.
Yeah, right.
But during this time, what happened? So we were coding our own like MPEG players to broadcast at the school, and like forced people to go to the pub to look at a screen. But then suddenly there was this like place where you could upload the film and just magically email it, and that place was called YouTube.
Yeah, for the first time we were like, "What the heck is that?" Remember? Now it's a big
and it worked on all like even on Internet Explorer version shit.
Right.
So and then I think it became obvious to us, like, A, we love doing this. B, people around us say that we are funny. And then C, something is changing here. Like video will essentially be liberated.
Right. There's no question.
And so we dropped off school.
You started a company?
Yeah.
Just making videos for who? Like funny videos for companies or people, or like who are you doing it for? There was this whole community that didn't exist yet, YouTube.
Yeah. No, we had a lot of different theses. Like our business plan is a joke. Like if I would look at it now, it's like make videos for, we don't know, someone.
Yeah, it's true.
And no, but we started, like, we made films for like universities to like, come, this university is the greatest.
Yeah, to show them off, right?
Yeah, but also for rich people's weddings. So we were essentially wedding photographers, but did like funny stuff at the weddings. So, you know, giving a bit of oomph. But also, I just had a guy on recently. His company's called Funny Sales Videos, because they discovered when they were doing videos that when they're funny, they get a lot more hits, you know, millions instead of thousands. So that's what they do. Funny sales videos for companies. Yeah, I think it's you want, because nobody wants you to do a video. It's okay to have video of your wedding, but you want it to be entertaining, right? So people are going to watch it more than once. this is super interesting because we started doing funny videos, but we stopped doing funny videos.
Really?
So we had the exact reversed one from the one you had here, and the reason for that is quite simple. So basically, when you're selling a video,
yeah,
to a company or what have you, essentially, we sold to companies, bigger companies, but so I agree completely. Like, videos should be funny because that increases the likelihood of someone watching it. But
right.
But at the same time, funny is so subjective.
It is.
Is this funny or not?
Right. Funny to you is not funny to me. Right.
Exactly. So when middle manager at industrial company orders funny,
right, he doesn't think yours is funny. Right.
No, and we have different interpretations of funny. And
right.
basically being paid to do funny by someone who says that is not funny, it's like it's the most pain I've had in my professional life.
So like I just decided off the stage, right? You get to just stand up and they boo you off the stage. That's not funny. You're like, yes, it is. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. You're right. It's very subjective, and it may be cross-cultural too, and cross-industry. You get certain companies that are more conservative, and they're like, yeah, that's not really us. That makes us uncomfortable. And then you get other people that they don't care. They're they want to watch Jackass on the MTV.
No, exactly. And so that's why, like, when you talk about the guy that you had on the show, I'm like, I admire that guy because he, I can guarantee you that he has been through some severe suffering.
Oh yeah, I mean, he explained that it's not for everybody, and there are people that don't think what their proposals are funny. Sometimes they talk them into it, and then the video does very well, and the company's surprised. And sometimes they're just still not comfortable with it because it doesn't fit their culture or their what makes them comfortable. But I think that's an interesting comment that he kind of migrated away from that. But at that point, you just liked making videos. There wasn't any really mission except for just making videos and finding customers, right? There was a specific goal in mind.
Yeah, I think what we always gravitated towards was making things that had meaning.
Okay.
And this really becomes kind of the during this 10 to 12 years when we ran this agency, it migrated more and more towards deeper and deeper meaning. But really, and along that road, we started working with larger and larger corporations, and then global corporations, and then we were not only a film agency, we also were a full-blown communications agency.
Right, marketing, digital, right, sure.
Yeah, so we grew that to roughly 80 people, and eventually sold that to a French tech player.
So it became
Valtech.
a big company. Company.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, once you get to that level, then the message that they put out, showing that they're a company that cares, all that kind of stuff becomes obviously very important.
Yeah.
Business.
No, and it was very obvious, like probably like the last 2 years there for me. I basically, when all your ideas is about like describing how the world should shift towards a more sustainable world, essentially,
right,
then it was kind of obvious to me also that it was almost like that scene became a vehicle for me to express myself, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we were really good at it, so it provided a lot of value. But it was also there's always someone like who you're telling that message for, and
right,
and also tied to that, it was a consultancy in essence. Like it's you, you build things for others, and along that road. So if we back up around, what is it, 2013, we decided like we also want to like make or break ourselves, because consultancy is both like you give people advice that they seldom fully follow,
right?
But also you don't really. The good part is like, if something fails, you can always blame, oh no, it was them,
right, because they didn't listen to us, right?
But you're not held fully accountable, and we've jointly in our founder team felt very big urge for that. So we're four partners there who really stayed together for almost 12 years, which was extraordinary. We built
And then when
really,
you sold the agency, you kind of guys went your different ways, or did you all together start another company?
so I'd started to gravitate away because my desire to head the climate, like to tackle climate head on, had been so strong. Like it actually ate me from the inside, to the point that I had to go to therapy to like figure out
bothering you so much.
Yeah. And actually, my therapist then said, like, advised me to avoid the subject.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the problems, right? You could go so deep into the problems with climate change that you think that we're never going to survive as a species, which ultimately may be true, by the way, but it's not happening tomorrow. And it could really take you down a dark hole,
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a lot of people that
it did. But my therapist and she came to that conclusion and gave that advice. But my interpretation of that was 180, rather the opposite, that I had to go
focus
head
your
on.
energy. Yeah.
Go.
But that wasn't ClimateView, right? That was a different company first.
No, that was actually ClimateView. So I'm sorry, I'm
Okay.
skipping in between here. But
okay.
I'd say so. The in between was, so we did multiple entrepreneurial journeys there.
So there was overlap with the different companies.
Yeah, whilst also driving our agency, which was actually which was both a blessing and a curse, because we had so many resources at hand.
Yeah.
Where we could we could make fantastic things in such a short amount of time to build. We could build a brand in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Of fantastic quality, but it also what we realized, it's one thing to build brand, it's another thing to pivot, build.
Yeah.
And really we had a couple of things that didn't fly, whereas we had one which is named ASKET, or ASKET. So that's basically it's a clothing brand that takes, one could say it's trying to upend fast fashion by creating slow fashion. So it looks at clothing in a new way, basically trying to create garments of optimal quality that has optimal enduring capabilities. I'm doing a bad picture.
No. But we look, for the people who are listening, fast fashion is like H&M, Century 21, all these different companies that are making these things that end up in landfills that are, so inexpensive that people just buy and discard. And right. I mean, that's fast fashion. That's what's become fast fashion.
And this is the exact opposite. So starting out with the hunt for the perfect t-shirt, and I think now that t-shirt is on version 3.4 or something. It's really like, so implementing feedback from customers to constantly iterate. That t-shirt it's fantastic.
So what makes it a perfect t-shirt? That it lasts and it's durable and you don't end up throwing it out, or what makes it perfect?
That together with the sizing system on 15 size. So if you're like a tall wide, you have in every size you have short, regular, and long.
Right. I have the same problem. My torso is long, so I buy extra long t-shirts, or else they don't stay in my
so then you should check ASKET.
Oh, they're still in business?
No, they're flourishing. It's a fantastic company. And also so along the journey they also so I'm not going to take the credit for that. I take credit for being part of starting it, but really like the key in that is August and Jacob, the co-founders, who have built that into a marvelous.
They ran with it. They still run the company.
Yeah, they still run the company, and it's now it's yes, it's a men's anti-fast fashion brand, but it's a philosophy. It's driving radical transparency. It's driving holistic thinking. It's driving meaning to clothing, which I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize the climate impact of the clothing industry. It's like worse than I mean, great, we're driving electric cars and we're not using plastic bags in the supermarket, but there are industries, clothing being one of them, that are having a really, really, really negative impact on the planet. We don't think about it in the United States. Maybe you think about it more over Sweden. We just buy and
we are the home of H&M, right? So
yeah, is that H&M Swedish?
Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, people figure it out. Look, that's what capitalism is all about. I read a book. I may have been in high school or college, and it was called "Small is Beautiful," and it was all about how we treat capital resources like they're income resources. So we consume capital resources as if they're replenishable, as if they're going to come back. And I guess, 50, 60 years ago, nobody thought, or 100 years ago, nobody thought with all this stuff going into landfills, whatever, that were just polluting the planet, what's going to happen. But now it's a major problem. Just because your garbage leaves your house, goes somewhere, I think nobody wanted to really care about that. It's out of my house, right? Paid the guy to take it away. Where did he take it?
Yeah, I remember Simpsons episode. It was about that. The Simpsons slogan, because he became the mayor, and then he formed the slogan, "Let someone else do it."
Right, there you go. It's true. That's what we think. We don't really look. I understand everybody, the average person, we're all caught up in our lives, and you live in your life and take care of your kids and growing, and that's what human beings do, right? We grow, we raise, we die, and then new people come along. But the impact is so incrementally minuscule at the beginning that we end up doing things as a species that is so incrementally small over a short period of time, but very big impact, that down the road, and we'll talk about ClimateView, generations then end up paying the price of no foresight 100 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Nobody struck oil and said, oh, we should put this stuff back. I mean, this is just going to destroy the planet. This is gross, it's disgusting, it's dangerous, it's flammable, you can't, all this kind of stuff. No, they were like, wow, we could change the world, and we could, run machines, and, we can refine it, and kerosene and all this type of stuff. Look where we are now. So, okay. So you were involved with ASKET for a short period of time, and then you channeled your energies and concerns to ClimateView, or was there a company before that? No, ClimateView.
No, I was gonna. So I know it's a pretty accurate description. Whereas I was like on this really quest for finding what I'm gonna do next. What I knew was I want to go head on climate.
Right.
And
I know how. Right. There's a lot of ways.
No,
to
I didn't
know
know. I didn't know. I went to conferences. Right. I went to a lot of food tech conferences because I saw that food is it has potential of big impact, and it's everyone thinks and eats food, right? So
right. They don't realize that impact. That's another one, right? Farming and its impact on the planet, water scarcity. Hydroponic farming uses like 90% less water, I think, and all that kind of stuff. But then I was talking to somebody the other day, because I have a friend who started a hydroponic farm. They bought this building. They're learning the technology. They're working with the students from the college, universities. They're coming up with really great stuff. I think they're going to open soon. They're a small operation, but they also have. He said, we don't have insect problems or any of that kind of stuff. And I said, well, what's the climate impact on that, right? So now you're not doing outdoor farming as much, so there are less insects. That's all part of an ecosystem. He said, I never really thought about that. So there's always other ramifications. Look, we all go to electric cars. Then we're gonna have all these batteries we don't know what the hell to do with. That you can't just put them in landfills and bury them in the ground. So that's gonna be another problem that we have to solve. So it just seems to me like it's always, you're solving one problem and you seem to be creating another. But that's what your opinion about it is.
No, yeah, it is partly true, but I think one also needs to recognize that this is a transition period. Okay. And just because something isn't perfect straight away, it's still a hell of a lot better.
Oh, yeah, there's no question about it.
If I were to criticize the general environmental movement, that becomes a very broad stroke, but it is letting perfect being the enemy of good.
Right. Better. That's a good point. Yeah. Better
and really,
better than what we have now.
Yeah, and of course, there's going to be an electric, it's going to be a battery problem, and it's going to be scarcity in metals, and you have war metals. I'm not saying that all of those will be surpassing problems, but they will essentially. I'm not too concerned about that. But if you look at the overall equation of, a combustion engine, what is it? With an efficiency of 25 to 30%.
Yeah.
And with the what do you say, emissions that you will not able to get rid of, because it's the motor is revving around. Whereas on an electric engine, it's up to 90% efficiency. That's a hell of a lot more efficient, right?
And no emissions.
And as long as you enable to make the grid clean, which we will, we're getting there.
We're getting there.
Then it's a hell of a lot better.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying these issues have to be addressed. I'm not saying they're not surmountable. I think they'll come up with this. Gotta, I guess, baby steps. So when so ClimateView, I know, works with like municipalities and I guess other governments to create a plan or whatever. You'll explain it to me, but was there an interim process? Like, what's the process you went through to figure out, okay, what kind of a company do I want to do? Because there's a lot of things you can do in the climate, environmental sustainability kind of industry, so I'm curious as to what your whole thought process.
I mean, I think I come back to my just like with the substitute thing, that wasn't a plan, but it happened, and then
kind of came
together.
To be,
and a bit like here, it's like I exposed myself to just different things. I went to Harvard for, I think it was a week or 2 weeks, I don't remember. I took a negotiation class at Harvard because I thought that was very interesting, and met people there that didn't like. It may be better at negotiations, sure, but it didn't take me to climate in any way. And then I went to food tech conferences and I learned a lot, but it didn't bring me anything. But then suddenly my wife came home and she's like, yeah, I had a cocktail with a friend, and she has this friend who's like a professor like type who has some sort of climate idea. You want to meet him? And I was like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Like,
right.
So I was put up on this professional blind date. And to that blind date comes a man. His name is Tomer Shalit. He is, he is a Swedish born with Israeli/Scottish descent.
Okay.
And I'm tall, he's short, and we meet. We say hi, and he has this like strange tube on his back. And you go like, what's in the tube, right?
Yeah.
And then he takes
like a tube where you put architectural plans, that type of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Schematics or whatever.
Yeah.
And he brought this with him to the meeting.
Yeah. And if this is a learning actually. If you ever want people to be curious of you walking around town, just put a tube on your back, and people are going to ask you what's in the tube.
Yeah. Well, they might think you have a pipe bomb too.
Okay. Didn't think of that.
Yeah, no. And you were meeting him, so you were like, obviously, probably the whole time curious about what's in the tube, right?
Yeah, what's in the tube?
Yeah.
So going back to, and so I'm gonna start. What happens then? He rolls up what's in the tube. So it's a 4-meter long poster that he rolls out on this big ass table, and basically he says this is the transition of the Swedish transport sector, and here are the quantities represented by the like the wideness of the scales, and here you see the hierarchies of goal, strategies, solutions, or execution. And I stand there and like I started crying. But I didn't show it because we didn't know each other well enough yet, and I wasn't like comfortable enough in my
your therapist
manhood.
This meeting.
Yeah. But I cried as a sense of relief.
Yeah. Like here you finally found a guy who like thinks the way you think, right?
No, actually, it thinks a lot better than I think.
Yeah, better, right? I know. You were like, oh, there are people out there that, right?
Yeah, but he was able to instill this. Like I could look at this map and I could see like, oh, these are the proportions. And I could go from the highest level of hierarchy, from the helicopter perspective, down into like down to the policy, the current policy was suggestions being on the table in the Swedish government. So to really see like this is being done or discussed as we speak, and I could and I could see the potentials of different solutions as they were assessed today, and I could see where the gaps were and everything, and I was like, dude, how did you do this? And so
Einar, was this a it showed like what the climate impact was of the public transportation system and then different solutions as to how to solve those things, or no?
No, this was basically saying like this is a transportation system of Sweden of personal vehicles, of
so
lorries,
public and private. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And so this is how much they emit.
Okay.
And this is a goal. So they're going to be reduced by 70% until 2030. The government decided that. And this is, this is the different quantities of, the personal vehicles, the lorries. These are how, based on the latest research, we think that we can reduce that by 70%. And these are the, actions supporting that.
So it was like, this is what the government's where it said we have to be. These are where the pollution's coming from. And this is the plan to get by 2030 to that level of. Okay.
And here are the gaps in that plan. So and in essence, that is, that is what ClimateView also today provides in broad strokes. It's the plan to zero.
Okay. So it was his company? Was he working for the government? Did he have a government contract? Well, why was he making these charts?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'm going to skip back and I'm going to talk a bit about Thomas Schelitten. So fascinating person, the most brilliant person I've met to date, and I'm still increasingly impressed by him.
Okay.
He comes from a background of being a mathematician. He was then also one of Sweden's first UI teachers at the design university up in northern Sweden, Umeå. He also created a couple of deep tech startups. He has also done theatrical studies in London.
Okay.
So cross-functional at his core.
Right. Very background.
And for the later years, he'd been in consultants of large transformations in big corporations by applying agile methodologies. So basically, a big bank is going to change IT system, and everyone sitting around the table go like, where the hell do we start? So he comes in and basically starts working with this group by first assembling, all the data, by interviewing all people, like where are we? What's, we have 11 like a lot of consultancy reports saying like this. So assembling that, putting that into a hierarchy and a visualization of this map. Basically a poster, but for to visualize the road there. And then you have all these people in this room looking at that visualization to say like, oh shit, this is where we are now, and this is where we're going. We don't exactly know what's going to be along, the way there, but through also the process of untangling complexity, through, if there's a new solution coming in along the way, or we meet that person or what have you, you're also able to, because we're not going to be able to do the perfect plan now.
No, but if you know where you are and where you want to go, you can make adjustments along the way to get there.
Yeah, and you need to set the rules of interaction, and also to create a standardized way of basically measuring along the way and follow up. So him doing that for a few years and then seeing the enormous power in that, in getting people to basically align and work towards it, because we have it, and then he sits there and go like, wow, why am I spending this time on insurance companies and banks to make their profit margin slightly better when I can do this on climate?
Yeah, which is something he was more passionate about.
Yeah, so he was seeing his therapist, I guess. But what he then was simply like open governmental papers, stacks of books that were available. Yeah, he literally locked himself in for 3 months and created this data structure and visualization, and that was in the tube.
And was that an RFP for the government? It was a proposal.
So he meets me I say, if you do this, on a second date, I said, if you do this and only this, I will be the first investor.
Okay.
But also given my lessons before, like doing this, both being a consultant whilst doing startups, like I really didn't believe in that. I really believe in going like hard stop, like now focus only on this.
Right.
So that was my requirement for.
Right, but he was that why you were introduced to him? He was looking to raise capital and bring people on his team, or you were like, I want in and I'll give you money, and he, yeah,
No, it was more like no, that wasn't the reason that we were put together. It was more like, you're kind of interested in the same thing.
Yeah, right.
We think
that's why it was a date. Yeah.
So, but I saw also that I could be of help.
Right.
Not only so this idea to articulate that in film, for example, we did that straight away. Like just we threw together a film in a couple of weeks, and suddenly this idea seemed like, whoa, this is not only an idea, this is a thing, right? This is a so just painting that little pig into a big pig. All of this,
right.
But what he did at that time also. So basically, and yeah, to your point, what you asked earlier about this, like, so what's this gonna be? And we sit down probably like it's the 30th, like, is this an NGO? And I remember we both like, no, because I think we both have quite distinct experiences of seeing that as a, it has its functions, but it's as a means to really create fast, hard change. It doesn't work. It's too slow moving, and it has. But really, where we're coming from, also like this, whether you like it or not, money runs the world, and this company is going to run on money.
But he didn't even have a company at that point, did he?
No,
it's just an idea.
Yeah. So that company was started, and in the subsequent weeks, he took that poster to different bodies of the Swedish government, who all went like I did. I don't know if anyone cried, but the guy who'd written the longest of these books, he basically, their quote was, "Oh shit, it looks like you painted the inside of my brain."
Right.
Which is and at that point, so everyone acknowledged this is fantastic. This should be done as some sort of test project, but no one wanted to kind of own it. But then the Swedish stately owned power company, Vattenfall, the strategy head of strategy there, basically took it to their boss. He literally took the poster to head of Vattenfall and went like, "I think this should be done." Head of Vattenfall goes, "Okay." So they the pilot, where we jointly took then a bunch of governmental agencies, the Swedish EPA, the Energy Agency, and the Swedish Climate Policy Council, into a, I don't know if that's a PC word to use, but a war room, one could say, where they met 3 days a week to create that data structure.
So this is your first client?
Yeah.
Swedish government.
Yeah. And our longest client to date. So the Swedish Climate Policy Council is the owners of Sweden's path to net zero. So they run on what then became Climate OS a couple of years down the line.
Got it. Well, I think it's an interesting, what's the word, analogy. You made a comment before about one of your early businesses, maybe even with the filmmaking agency, that, it would be funny if you looked at a business plan because you didn't have a business plan. You were like just figuring it out along the way. And a lot of business owners do that. You went to business school, you know how to write a business plan, you put it together. It's kind of similar to what you do for cities, right? You say, okay, here's where you are, just starting out, and here's where you want to be. And then you build a plan to get there. It's never exactly the way you envision it. There's changes along the way and adjustments and things to get you to where you want to go. But a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, small companies, they don't do that. Like they don't, try and keep the train on the track heading towards the goal. Maybe the goal has to be adjusted a little bit at the end, right? The outcome, but they don't have a roadmap. So a lot of business owners kind of just wing it, which is one of the things we talk about on the podcast all the time. So I think what you're doing, ClimateView, not only is it an entrepreneurial venture, but the way you do it you're writing a business plan for a city to solve their climate change problems. And a lot of people don't see the value in that until they fail, unfortunately. And they can't figure out why they failed because there was no measuring, there was no way to measure, are you on track? Are you solving this problem? Is it getting better or worse? I think it's, I know it's an epiphany when people go, yeah, that's wow. But in its simplest form, what you're doing in ClimateView is a simple concept. It's difficult to execute and difficult to map out and so forth, but concept of itself makes total sense. That's how you should be doing it.
Yeah, it's maybe you should sell ClimateView.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of governments do that, right? United States is very guilty of this. They pass laws and they say, we're going to be here in 2035. This is what's going to happen. But nobody knows how you're going to get there. And then, then governments change and administrations change and things get off the rails. And the next government doesn't come back and go to the binder and pick up where the other one left off. It often falls apart. And that's how, as a species, I think we get off track all the time when it comes to how we treat the climate.
Yeah, but I find it fascinating because I think there's never been, if you take a step back and look at this transition to net zero, where we upend the burning of fossil fuels, that will happen. Yeah, at some point it will. It's going to
run out. And there's just no way.
Yeah,
right.
And the sooner we do it, the better off we are. And really, when you look at it, we start, looking at combustion engines, for example, how inefficient they are, and they're not going to, they reach peak efficiency. So they're not making that any better, which means like everything we know today as noisy, polluting, inefficient, it's going to be replaced. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing that is happening as we speak now is that whether you give a shit about climate or not, it's super clear that this is where the world is heading, which means that if you continue to sell combustion engine cars, you're going to be screwed, right?
Yeah.
And the winners are the ones who trailblaze their way there.
Yeah.
So suddenly it's not about like, oh, our survival as a species. It becomes a matter of being ahead in business.
Right.
And what we find very fascinating. So we have a lot of my new things in life is eating breakfast with American governors that comes to Sweden to look at what's up with the Swedish
what are you guys doing over
space.
here?
Yeah. What is that?
But you're right. Business drives survival of a species doesn't seem to motivate anybody. It motivates
some, but
not enough, and it's not real to people. Like nobody thinks the planet's going to blow up tomorrow, so they're like, well, I'll be dead by then. So they just don't. It's too big. That's not the right way to say it. It's too big of a concept for the average person to even deal with. Like you said, when you really were dealing with the concept of what's going on the planet, you ended up in therapy. So I think most people, they just can't. It's too much for them to deal with. But if it's driven by business and capitalistic opportunities, then it's much more likely to happen.
Yeah, and you can say what you want about that, but we decided you could choose to scream about or I wouldn't say scream, but basically to complain about the capitalistic system, how it how it screwed us up, and that's in very large extent extremely correct. But how we come to this ClimateView is seeing what got us into this mess is what's going to get us out of it.
Right.
So that is at the core our religion, and why we now, as we see all these mechanisms, and also like with the Inflation Reduction Act in the US and also Europe's new Green Deal, it's happening, man.
Yeah.
And US, Europe is ahead, but US is going to play catch up. You guys usually don't like being second, right? So
I think climate change, the whole rest of the world's ahead of States. We're the consumer capital of the world. We use up everything. Don't give a shit in a lot of cases. We're starting to, but I think you go to places like Iceland and even where you are in Sweden, different parts of Europe, they're much more, attuned to what's going on. I think, is that a wrong impression?
No, it's not across the board, but it's somewhat yes. But I still think that once this installment of like this is where the world is heading, at least on the what is it, non-release of fossil fuels, like that's it's US is gonna play catch up and surpass. That is my guess. Like that is a non-qualified guess from a non-US citizen.
Yeah, some of it has to do with the quality of the person that gets elected. Administration, Washington derails everything. The whole country's on fire. But I think that if you look at what's going on around the world and the things I've just learned a while ago, because I'd never heard of it before. It's common in your business about carbon emissions and how to become carbon neutral. But it seemed weird to me because this guy, and it was business driven, it was a Wall Street firm. They're putting together a fund, I think, to raise money to sell carbon credits.
Yeah.
Right. Based on, I don't know, replanting, things in the Congo or something. I don't know, whatever. But I understand the balance is that you have trees and other things that emit, that absorb the carbon, to absorb the carbon that's being created by other airlines, let's use for example, right? I think airlines, there's a rule in Europe, right, that airlines have to be carbon neutral by a certain point, something like that. But there's no way to do that right now technologically. So you got to buy carbon credits to offset the carbon that you emit. I think that's the only way to do it, right? Is that real, or is that just fake? It makes them seem like they're carbon neutral and they're not really.
Yeah, I say like that's it's a bit of the Wild West. Everyone's kind of winging it. I'm not too concerned about that. So there are many ways to look at carbon credits. I think it's philosophically it's quite one needs to it needs a podcast episode of its own. But in essence, I'm like those things, like the tree planting in country in Africa, that's it's most kind of infant stage of like where it's trying to find its home. I think that that will essentially, I'm not too concerned about that right now. Again, it's Wild West. People are making preposterous claims, and
exactly,
quite laughable, and essentially they're going to be punished for that as well.
Right.
So it's in one way or another, it's going to be it's going to be somewhat self-regulating. I foresee, at least. Again, qualified guess.
But if you're an airline, you can't reduce your carbon emissions. I mean, you need to use there's no replacement for the engine and the jet fuel that's used in an airplane, not at this point.
No, but in essence, one would say like pure carbon capture, if that worked at scale, but it's not even remotely close to be able for an airline to buy in, so no, but on the other hand, you see electric flights are going to come, and that's going to change aviation. That's going to like have such a profound effect on not only aviation but also how we travel.
Right, but is that even technologically on the drawing board, or is it really just a hope and a dream someday?
Oh no! There's
technology that's being developed.
Oh yeah, it's a big race towards that. I think if you look at regional flights under, I'm not going to say an exact figure, somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 kilometers.
Okay.
Those will, flights are going to be electric there in, I'm guessing, within at least maximum 5 years. Again, qualified guess.
That could fly a plane, give, I guess, enough thrust through an engine of something that's electric, that could fly a plane over a couple of 1,000 kilometers.
Yes, that will happen. And the profound impact that's going to have, because suddenly the business case for, like, in aviation, the biggest cost is fuel.
Yeah.
So suddenly the business case completely changes.
Yeah.
And then also the landing strips. I think, an electric plane, again, guessing, will need roughly half the length of an airstrip. So suddenly you can have much more hyperlocal, and probably, so now we're talking only like regular airplanes, probably you also going to have this you know, when you mix drones and airplane in construction, then you start to compete with cars.
Yeah.
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 So
Interesting. They're like the Jetsons.
so yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like the Jetsons.
Yeah, but I guess it's possible, right? I mean, it's just a question of developing technology. It's interesting to see
That-
where
that-
we're going to go.
That will happen.
Yeah, but don't we use? How do we generate the electricity though? Don't we have fuel burning plants that generate the electricity? But it's a lot less, I guess. Than
It will be a lot
uses.
less. So we've been waiting for fusion to come since 1972.
Oh, right, and then you don't need
Still-
gasoline.
But yeah, we'll see about that. Now, but the build out of wind and solar, obviously the most obvious. If you look at aviation, obviously just charge the plane when there's sun.
Yeah, what just like
It's-
is that
it's-
enough? You solar panels all over the wings, and then
No, not all of the wings, but obviously you need a big ass battery to charge it.
big ass battery. Yeah, to obviously. No,
a-
I'm not
a lesser
suggesting it's going to
big-
fly with solar panels just take off, but yeah, there's obviously got to be a receptacle collecting the electricity. But
Yes.
I guess
You know,
that all improves. Technology all improves, right?
No, solar is going to be better. Batteries is going to be better. Again, like we define the world as it is today. Those things will incrementally have changed unto them. There will be a couple of breakthroughs as well. So the world is heading in this way.
All right, so let's get
It's
back
gonna
to your
happen.
business of ClimateView. So tell me how the business runs, how many employees you have, how do you run the business? You're out pitching municipalities. Is that what you're doing to show them how? Well, tell me what ClimateView does.
So ClimateView basically helps cities to create a plan towards net zero.
Okay.
So city goes, we're going to be net zero by 2035. And the
Okay.
follow-up question of how, they go like, oh shit, we don't know.
You gotta
Okay.
hire a firm
Climate-
to lay it out for us.
Yeah. So
Okay.
what we then bring is a software that also have this basically underlying model that tells the city how to look at this. Because only that, like, okay, how the hell do we slice this? Should we make like a 2,000 bullet to-do list?
Right.
Or can, yeah. So what we essentially bring is the kind of ready-baked cake for them to say, okay, these are the KPIs. Because like in any transformation, you wouldn't do that to-do list. You would say like, which are the essential KPIs and
Yeah.
what are those leading indicators?
Yeah.
And also, what do they cost? So we bring that operating system that we call it, the Climate OS, and we provide those KPIs. We put dollars and cents on it, and then it becomes the living working
Yeah.
document for that
So,
city.
is the
collaborate.
software or what you guys do is show them how to do it, and then how is it implemented? How is it measured? Do you do that too?
Yep. So we have those leading indicators. For example, let's say one such KPIs is how many citizens we shift from fossil cars to electric cars.
Okay.
So the measurement of that, usually it's like what is the sales of new cars? Like how big of a proportion of those are electric versus combustion engine cars.
Right.
And that's the leading indicator that we steer this by. And by providing incentives to replace, it's that when you take your next purchase decision to buy an electric car, we tilt our citizens towards that shift, right?
Right. The private purchase. It's different if it's public transportation, because then the city makes its own purchase decisions based on the plan.
Yeah.
That's a different story.
Yeah, and that's another shift. Like you have
Yeah.
the shift from combustion engines to, for example, electric buses.
Yeah, we have a lot.
Yeah, and how can we, as a city, through policy, through regulation, through information campaigns, how can we affect that shift? And likely, it's about having better timetables for buses. It's about safer buses, or the perception of that being safer. It's probably also about just raising parking fees for cities for cars, making it harder to go by car. It's
Right. Yeah, they have those high volume areas that you're supposed to stay away from. where you get surge pricing. They're like, I don't know how they're going to do it in New York. They'll charge you more to drive into certain sections of the city because they want to keep you out of those sections of the city because it's too.
I mean, and this is really nice. Like when we look at these different shifts, often when we look at the business case of it, usually those are quite nice. Like it actually makes sense to decarbonize your city. You're gonna have less polluted air. You're gonna have more healthy citizens, and you're actually gonna have a city that is more that produces a higher quality of life.
Right, because much higher quality.
We talk about green cities, but instead we could just call them great cities, because the cities that have, I think in Europe that you look at, oh wow, they are really getting it, like the Copenhagen and Amsterdam, where you've had just where you've had enormous investments in cycling infrastructure, for example. What that does to the overall city livability, it is fantastic.
Sure.
And some cities, I think, like Ljubljana, I can never pronounce it, like the capital of Slovenia, like them, they've banned cars in the inner city. And I think when the mayor proposed this,
so meaning you have to take transportation if you want to go into the city.
At least in the exact inner core.
Right.
And when this was proposed, a majority was actually against it, but mayor pushed for it anyway. And now I think X amount of years, maybe 5 years down the line, 97% of citizens are pro. So no one wants to go back to how it was. Because they see the results.
Sure, they like what they have. It was interesting, during pandemic when we stopped using cities and we stopped using transportation, things started clearing up. The air quality, it was, the animals could breathe. It was just different, and people saw that. I mean, obviously we went back to living our lives again, but yeah, I mean, ultimately you get there. But so how long has ClimateView been in business now?
So we've been in business for a bit more than 4 years. We're 60 people at the moment. We're active in 9 countries. We have an American CEO who sits in Indianapolis.
Oh, my son lives.
Carmel, Indiana.
Yeah.
Or
Carmel's right outside Indiana. Yep.
Right. I mix up Indianapolis and Indiana. So Indiana is a state.
Indianapolis is the state capital. Carmel is a suburb or a town near Indianapolis.
Sorry.
Indiana's
sorry for
the
my
state.
Ignorance.
Yeah, it's okay.
Gosh.
Yeah, I wouldn't know the difference between Sweden, Copenhagen, Denmark, whatever. So.
So that's where we are. We've gone through our A round.
In the United States.
No, we took that. No, A round in capital wise. So we took that. That A round is a mix of venture capital from the States and Europe.
And is that to continue to develop the technology that you have, as well as build the organization? How many municipalities have you worked for over the 4 years?
So we have 180 registered municipalities on platform.
Oh wow!
And the first American city to go public with ClimateOS with a public dashboard towards citizens is Cincinnati.
So you as a citizen of Cincinnati can go right on the dashboard and see what's going on and learn how you can be a participant.
Or at least figure out the proportions and the road there, but and have a hypothesis of how you could best affect it. Yes.
Right. Well, you're trying to get the buy-in of the people who live this every day, right? Because without that, it's never going to work. Yeah. So what are the? I know we've been talking about an hour now, but what are the plans for the future? You still, obviously, you got a lot of work to do, and growing and dealing with cities. But ultimately, if you've now dealt with a substantial portion of municipalities, what's the next step for the company?
The reason we chose municipalities is really that they are symmetric and they want to share data. Everyone wants everyone to succeed. Yeah. And everyone actually wants us to succeed as well. So it's like it's a nice vibe. Yeah. And really leveraging those prerequisites to its fullest and getting an exploding amount of cities on board, really moving into those tier 1 cities, the capitals of Europe, the states of the US, and also to really these business plans, which I'm talking about, which is built into the system, really putting those forward to the financial system, who has very explicitly say, like, we want to help decarbonize this world, and
Right.
have those municipalities, states, countries to really be helped by this platform and the framework that we put forward to put the dollar where it's on best use to not only decarbonize, but to create the cities and the countries that we want to live in, because the future is bright.
Yeah, right. If we all work together, it is, right?
Yeah.
Now, do you have competition? Are there other companies that are out there, doing kind of the same thing you're doing, or not really?
We have others doing like carbon inventories, but really what we bring is this systemic approach, with
Holistic,
a
right?
holistic view.
Yeah, right.
And so we don't have any other specific players there today. We will.
Yeah.
I'm quite sure, and we
I'm sure you
welcome
hope
that, I
to.
think.
Yeah, you will, right? You don't want to be the only one driving the training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it hasn't been super obvious to other players that there is a business case in cities, and I
Right.
think we made a big bet on that a few years ago, which is proving out.
It's working. Like
Yeah.
your hypothesis is correct. There is a business case. Okay, so
and then they are at the epicenter of those investments needed to be made. So
right.
that's where change will drive.
So how can people learn more about what you're doing, interact with you, follow you, learn about what's going on maybe in their cities? We'll put links in the show notes, but maybe you want to let people know how to find you and interact with you.
So check our website, climateview.global.
Okay.
Thinking what else? Listen
Are you
to
on
this
LinkedIn?
episode. I'm on LinkedIn, please.
Okay. Find you on LinkedIn.
Find me on LinkedIn.
Right.
What else? I'm thinking if there's any.
You're hiring any
videos.
kids coming out of college, and they're maybe environmental scientists or environmental studies majors?
Yeah.
You're hiring those kids?
Yeah, superb kids from superb universities. We're good at hiring those.
All right. Well, maybe in a couple of years. My daughter my youngest is a junior in high school, very interested and very concerned about climate change. Won't let me even use a straw because she thinks I'm gonna kill a turtle, which may be true. But she doesn't really understand. Like, she's not really a science kid. I mean, just a little bit. She does well in chemistry. I think, and I want to get her to understand that there are a lot of things you can do in the climate change sustainability space and make a living and have an impact. So maybe a year or two, I'll get her in touch with you. Talk with her. If anybody's out there listening, look you up, right?
Yeah, and also we have a lot of the people in the companies are people that have successful careers, but like many of us have like, I'm now it's climate time, because if we don't fix this, nothing else matters.
Right.
So when I laugh about it in Stockholm, we're kind of first listed in the phone book of 35-year-olds that have their first or second child and wakes up and go like, oh shit, I can't.
Right, well, because you're a kid now you care.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a lot to be said for some of the three of the wealthiest people on the planet are trying to build rockets to get off the planet. Maybe it's something that they know that we got a bigger problem.
Well, I don't think Mars is a super.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna
nice
work.
place too.
Right.
Matt Damon, it seemed like shit for him. So.
Right, exactly. All right, Einar, I thank you for your time on a Friday afternoon from Sweden. And please, let's stay in touch. Keep changing the planet one day at a time.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Mitch.